Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode, your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
Hey everyone, welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I am your host, Brian Carney. This is a show where I interview an entrepreneur while we sample a beer that I've never had, and I give the beer a rating at the end. My guest today, all the way from the West Coast, is Casey Jacox, an author, speaker, podcaster, and owner of a leadership and sales development coaching business. And he's worked with some of the biggest companies in the United States, such as Stryker, Keller Williams, and my personal favorite, TaylorMade. Casey, welcome to the show.
Awesome, Brian. I'm honored to be here, and this wouldn't have happened. So we got to give love to the Pryor family, because without them, we're not here.
That's right. Past guests on my program, Henna Pryor, introduced me to you so I could be a guest on your podcast. And now you're on my podcast. So we're going all full circle in many different ways.
The gift just keeps on giving.
That's right.
It's like the Jolly of the Month Club from the Griswolds.
That's right. Exactly. Well, for our conversation, I happen to love Cape May Brewing, and I am going to try they did a combination beer with, it looks like it's called the Qualified Captain, AKA Boat Ramp Champ, which is a Hell's Lager. So I'll give this a review at the end.
You would cannonball it.
That's right. Yeah. See how that would go. That would make for an interesting conversation. Well, first of all, I'm excited to have you on. Your background as an athlete, which we'll certainly get into, but where I wanted to start is tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah. I was a 20-year corporate guy, and I left, and then coaching found me. I knew I wanted to write a book, which is called Win the Relationship, Not the Deal. I knew I wanted to start a podcast, which is called the QUARTERBACK DADCAST. I did not anticipate these two merging into one, but they completely do.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I interview a lot of my clients, which I've found helps them become more vulnerable and authentic to their companies, because their companies get to learn more about their leader as a father in and outside of work. And it further, I guess, promotes just being yourself.
Yeah.
Because ideally everybody else is already taken. So you might as well just be yourself anyways. But what I do is really, I speak, and then I coach. And so I coach around really, I'd say 3 areas that I've become very consciously competent with is humility, vulnerability, and curiosity.
Mm.
And I work with sales teams. I work with sales leaders. I work with executives from industries such as staffing, consulting, obviously the golf industry now. I do work in the insurance field. I do work in wealth management. I don't know, pardon my French, shit about wealth management.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll put that little E, but I know a lot about relationship building. And to me, is like, as much as, what's common sense to me is not common to others, and vice versa. That's why I'm the world's worst, handiest person in United States history.
Right.
But we all got our strengths. And so it's by far the most rewarding work I've ever done.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much you know, because I spent 20 something years at a company. And then when you get out, you don't realize what you learned. I mean, you maybe knew some stuff, but now when you get to give it away, it's the best.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to do, to kind of have that flip of that point of view once you've spent doing one thing for a long period of time, and then realizing, oh, wow, I actually learned a lot, and I can actually help people in a dramatic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so funny when you're out, and I go help companies, whether I'm doing like, leadership gap assessment work, or I'm doing coaching, or I'm speaking, and I'm not the smartest in the room, far from it, but I usually can pick out the gap really, really quickly.
Yep.
Based on a few questions, because I'm not in their business. I'm not in them. And when people are in their business, they're surrounded by noise, emotion, the story they tell themselves, all these things that are called excuses. Yeah. For me, I got to come in and just say, I got no relationships with anybody. I can quickly see a gap. And then I don't tell them what their gap is. I usually ask questions so they can come to their own realization themselves.
Yeah. Well, and you seem to have what you teach people is transferable to a lot of different industries. Like you mentioned, you don't know shit about financial services, but you work with financial services, but you also work with painting companies and golf companies. And, so how is that, how are you able to sort of have that message go across consistently to different industries?
Because every business needs relationships.
Yeah.
It's
universal.
Whether it's, it applies to a teacher and a student, a principal and a teacher, a recruit and a high school athlete, a jury and a lawyer.
Yeah.
A juror, a judge and a lawyer. We all have relationships we're looking for them. And so when I wrote my book and then I moved into coaching, I thought about when I was doing things at a high level or an elite level, what was I doing? How did I do it? And that's how I kind of came up with the 6 pillars of the book. And and as the author, I've read this book 7 or 8 times and I've learned something from myself every time I read it.
That's great.
Kind of embarrassing to say, but it also proves the point that, I'm not perfect at these things.
Yeah.
And I'm still working hard every single day to make, hey, am I bringing positivity to the huddle, to my team? Am I clearly setting expectations, or am I leaving people in the loop? Am I listening, or am I just there to listen to what I want to hear one thing and then talk about me more? And then we talk about me because I'm really good. Am I documenting what I write down in my CRM? Am I checking my ego? Am I being myself? Am I practicing? And then lastly, am I using patience to let relationships develop over time? And, so find me a business that doesn't need those 6 things.
Actually, I want to ask you a question real quick about, because you just said patience as it relates to a relationship. And one of the mistakes that we see people in our industry make that's relatable to that is, let's say you meet a center of influence. Accountants are good centers of influence for financial planners. I feel like many people in our world don't have the patience to let that relationship sort of, simmer, if you will. It's sort of like, I meet you 2 times and, hey, that guy didn't give me 3 referrals. I'm never talking to him again. How often are you teaching people like, hey man, that is the exact wrong strategy?
All the time. I teach what's called a boomerang mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So what does a boomerang do if you throw it well?
You throw it and it comes back to you.
That's right. The key in boomerang mindset is you don't keep score. So it exactly attacks what you just talked about. So in my mind, what fills my tank is connecting people. I love making connections. And I don't care if it comes back, because I know it will.
Yep.
It might be a year, it might be 2 years. I never leave someone off the phone like, hey, tell me, how can I help you? Who do you want to meet with? Tell me what's frustrating you right now? How can I try to, and watching other people get involved, and then it fills my tank more than anything. And
I'm so with you on that, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. I always say I love to be a guy that knows a guy, there you go. And to be able to say, I want people to come to me and go, hey, I need a roofer. I got you, and I love being able to connect to those people. So that really resonates with me pretty well. So you have a traditional start to a career. You work in corporate America for 20 years. Is there a singular moment that you decided hey, I got to get out of here and start my own business? Or how did that happen? How did you end up starting your own company?
Yeah. So I was a top rep for X amount of years. And then our former company was the company I was with, our CEO kept saying, we need mini Caseys. We need to create mini Caseys? I was like, well, I can't do it in the role I'm doing. So they were awesome. They created this role.
And what industry were you in, by the way?
This was at Kforce with Henna.
Okay.
That's where I met Henna.
Okay.
And so the staffing consulting business. And then they created this role for me where it was, 30% executive sponsor over one of our largest accounts, 30% replicate kind of what we did out of moving from a certain service, elevating it from a customer's view. I did some coaching mentorship internally on working with teams to come do different things or more at a more higher level. And then lastly, I was doing some speaking, some writing. And so at the end of that 3-year run, they wanted me to get back in coaching. And just producing, run a desk.
Yeah.
And the analogy I like to say is, imagine if you're a pilot and you fly Cessnas, and at the end of your career, you're flying the 747 from Philly all the way to frickin' Australia.
Yeah.
And the company comes back and says, hey, I got an idea for you. What if we'll run a Cessna again. I got a 182 from Scranton down to Orange, Jersey. What do you say?
And you're like,
I'm just and I was like, what if that doesn't really align with what I want to do? And so
Yeah.
It was a great divorce. I left on amazing terms. I'm so close with a lot of people I used to work with there. I'm so thankful for the time I spent with them, but it was right there. So that was a key moment. The other moments where I'd have customers sometimes say, I used to get defensive about this. I'd be like, when I talk to you, it's not the same as when I talk to everybody else inside your company. It's different. And I used to be like, it used to make me feel uncomfortable, or it would make me feel like, why do you put my teammates down there? But I understand it now what they were saying. And so like, to me, there was this voice in my head that kept saying, go, it's time. And I was like, I'm super loyal, obviously being there 20 years, but
sure.
I knew once I got out and I was like, it's time. And I read this book called The Surrender Experiment, which was a little out there from a faith perspective, but it really spoke to me on just surrendering to essentially life flow, trusting that what you've done for 46 years of life has worked fairly well.
Right.
You're not living in a van down by the river and you're in jail, and you don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
And like somebody said, what's your 3 to 5 year goal? I don't know.
Huh.
Who knows that? I mean, some people think they do. To me, I know I just want to serve the, at every person. I want to be as present as I can.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about, I got to have 13 clients coaching. I got to make X. And I think what's the beauty in that for me, Brian, is that I started my consulting business at a spot where, when I was in corporate America, all those revenue metrics were I was prevalent. Now it's not as important to me anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm doing well, but I'm not, It's not about like how much, it's me, like how many people am I serving and how many, and I know I'm going to be just as successful long-term from that mindset. I'm convinced.
Well, I think what you said is really interesting. And I think what you did is a really difficult thing to do, because you're probably making a lot of money at K-Force and you got a pretty good gig going. You've got a great income. You've got a good life going, and to say, you know what, it's not really about this. I'm not thrilled. I know I can do something different, better, but I do think that takes a lot of courage to give up the steady high paycheck and make a leap to go and like, I'm just going to figure this out. Were there times where you had people around you going, Casey, you're insane. Like, you've got a great job. What are you even thinking about doing?
Sure. And I think even like my wife, my wife was like, are we sure you want to do this? Like, honey, I can't, I don't want to be in something where my heart's not in it anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
And, there was definitely be like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. And I think my in-laws are a little nervous. Like, are you guys good? I'm like, yeah, we're good. We're definitely, I'm not stupid. We're not going to just like, but and I remember also back to your question about what changed or what was the tipping point.
Yeah.
And I had a client say, go change the world.
And
that was a big statement. I definitely believe in myself, hence the word believe behind me. But I'm on a mission to do that. Like I'm convinced that curiosity is a superpower that none of us use enough of. Once people really apply that curiosity, watch what happens to your business, relationships. You'll become less judgmental. Like Ted Lasso says, be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
I don't look back, because I know that I can always go back to corporate if I want to, but right now
fair point.
I'm serving dads in the podcast. Thankfully I was lucky to meet a guy like you and have you on the show, and your episode will be out later this year. And it's rewarding. It's fun. I get to have balance. I'm with my kids who are, both kids are going to be in high school, which is a trip.
Yeah, that is a trip for real. Well, the one thing that you talk a lot about is you help people that are stuck get unstuck. What are some common reasons you see people sort of getting stuck? I think people get stuck a lot. They know they just feel off and something's not right and they want to change something, but they can't pinpoint exactly what it is. When you work with your clients, how are you able to say like, all right, here's what's making that itch scratch so much?
I think one word: curiosity. I love hearing someone say, great question. Yeah. I don't ask 2 questions inside of 1 question and confuse the prospect or the client.
Yes.
Meaning that, so Brian, so what's going on in your world and how can I help you? And really what's biggest challenge for you? And what are you doing this weekend?
Right.
You asked me like four
4
questions.
questions. Which one do you want the answer to?
Right. Versus
Yeah.
tell me 2 things that have you excited and 2 things that got you frustrated right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shut the F up and look at them until they talk. I don't care if it's 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And then they're going to say something. And then I'm going to say, great, tell me more about that. And the number of times I've said, tell me more about that. Guess how many times people said, hey, go after yourself. I don't want to go tell me more about that.
0.
That
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet.
Right.
I learned that framework from a guy named John Kaplan. TED,
Okay.
Tell me, explain, describe. Sounds really, really simple. It's absolute gold. So I follow the TED framework. I teach the TED framework. It's
So wait, just real quick. I just want to make sure. Tell me, explain, describe. Okay.
So all the questions I ask, I work really hard to only use those starting of sentences. Gets people talking. Listen to podcasts that have a lot of or really good interviewers.
Yeah.
They use TED all the time.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You're the first person I've heard that I'm going to write this down. That has that methodology. So that's great. I love it. Well, is there a common reason that you see people get stuck and that are just not feeling fulfilled?
Sometimes it's as simple as the word behind me, belief.
Yeah.
Self-doubt, confidence, self-talk, the things we tell ourselves. And so like a lot of times I also do work for a company called Limitless Minds, which is Hannah and I do consulting work for them together.
Yeah.
And, at Limitless Minds, I've learned from some of our smart brain science folks that when we say things out loud, it increases that thought of happening by 70%.
Yep.
I tell the Bill Buckner story when I speak. People don't know that story. I'll tell it real quick. So I don't know if you know it, Brian, but like Bill Buckner's, he's known for the ground ball between the legs.
Yep. In the World
1986
Series.
World Series.
Yep.
But people don't know that 19 days before that, he got interviewed by a local Boston radio station. They said, man, Bill, where are you at? How's your mindset? He's like, man, I'm here. I'm at the World Series. This is like my dream. I've always wanted to be here. I've had, the dream I'm going to hit the home run. And I also have the nightmare that I'm going to get a ground ball hit to me. It's going to go between my legs, lose the World Series.
No way. I didn't know that.
19 days before World Series, he said that. So was he a prophet? No. Was he predicting the future? No. But it proves the point that when we say things, speak things into existence in the subconscious, that thought's there.
Yeah.
And so what I train people is imagine if we all have self-talk. We all have it every single day.
Absolutely.
But thoughts become, Colin Henderson, my colleague, he said things happen twice in your life. Once when it happens in your mind, and then once when you go make it happen in life. So, right. So it happens twice. But I always teach people, imagine your self-talk's like traffic.
Yeah.
So if you're on a bridge, a mile-long bridge, and it's dead bumper to bumper, how often is the average person going to roll their window down and, hey, what's your name? You get time for a minute? Like you share a Coke or smoke or talk? No one's going to do that.
Literally never. Yeah.
Never. So let's pretend these negative self-thoughts are those same cars. Let them go right by. Don't even look at them.
Interesting.
Ignore them.
Yeah. I find that self-limiting belief to be very, very for real. And you get in, you start talking about what your goals are and people are like, oh, well, I mean, it's not, you could go way bigger than what you think. And if you actually set a goal that is as big as you think it could be, what could happen? It would be, as you said, limitless.
Yeah. Imagine if Barack Obama, when he was young, said, I want to be the first African-American president. Oh, yeah. Are you an idiot? No one's going to do that.
That's never going to happen.
Or Oprah, or like I told my daughter, why not go be the first female president?
Yeah, it's true.
Someone's going to do it.
Yeah.
I believe in that why not me mentality.
It's funny you say that, why not me, because I'm a huge Phillies sports fan. Roy Halladay, when the Phillies were going into they finally got into the playoffs, he said, why not us? And it was the most logical thing. It's like, well, somebody has to win it. Why shouldn't it be us? So I think that's I love that thinking.
You have to start with belief every day.
Yeah.
Like I know I believe what I do matters 1000%. And I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not asking someone to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking someone to do something or coach them based on what I think might work. I'm doing it because I know either it works or it doesn't work for my own failures or success.
Right. Yep.
And so like I believe. And so when you believe, like, how are you going to sell a product if you don't believe in it?
Yeah.
Or believe in yourself?
Yep. I think the best coaches teach people and say, I made all these mistakes. I can help you not do that or get around that or get through that. I think that's a really powerful thing to be able to help people with.
It's back to the vulnerability piece and the humility. I think that's my equation for leadership. Humility plus vulnerability equals leadership. Best leaders I've worked for, they don't talk about, hey, let me tell you how great I am.
Right.
I'm a big deal. I have many leather bound books, and my place just smells of rich mahogany. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you about a time I sucked.
Yeah.
And let me tell you about, sometimes I'll lead with, hey, I was the number one guy at this company for 10 years, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? My phone number is not 911. I'm not that important, and neither are you.
Yep.
And guess what? I left in March of 2019, and that company's killing it without me.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, sure, they had a great memories, great relationships, but they're moved on.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like, man, we better as well stay humble, because life will humble you anyways.
Very true. I actually find the vulnerability part pretty fascinating, where you teach people to be, that makes them a great leader. I don't feel like that is the corporate mantra. You're supposed to be someone else when you're the leader. Like, you're supposed to have a mask on, and you're supposed to be the strong, never breaking type of person. How are you able to get through that old school mentality to be able to punch through that and teach people no, they actually want to know that you had a bad day, or that things aren't going well, or that you're stressed out about something or anxious about something?
So usually I'll lead with questions, curiosity again, and then I say, tell me how much vulnerability or humility is within your core values or your organization. Oh, we're great. We're great, Casey. We have a lot of humility. Like, man, that's awesome. And vulnerability, like you guys encourage questions, and you encourage people to speak up and we want to remove fear. Oh yeah, it's really, really good. Okay. Oh, man, that's great. You guys are elite. Good for you. Tell me the last time you've explained where you've effed up in front of your entire team. Tell me the time that you, in front of your entire team, have told them where you've struggled recently, or tell me the last time you've told your team where this is one area of your life you wish you were better. Well, I wouldn't do that. You ain't got vulnerability here, bro.
Yeah.
So let me know if you can help. That's not even close. I'm not trying to put you down. I'm not trying to be, but a coach is going to tell you what you don't want to hear.
It's true.
A coach is going to be like the coaches that coach me. They didn't let me off the hook.
Yeah.
They told me things that I didn't maybe want to hear, but I needed to hear. And so to me, once I get them to at least realize that they have gaps, then I say, think about the time. Tell me about a time that you failed. Now, who have you shared that with? Well, no one. Well, think about when you rewind your tape back to when you were 2 years into the job, and imagine if your leader said, hey, Brian, did I ever tell you the story about X? No.
Yeah.
When I really sucked and I was super nervous and scared to come to work and I almost wanted to quit. Did I ever tell you that story? No. I said, have you ever felt that? A little bit. I said, it's okay. Let's talk about that. It's okay to feel that way. And then once we realized that, like, hey, we all have got those feelings. Like, I wanted to quit freaking 10 times at K-Force.
Sure.
Self-doubt, negativity. My business got cut. I'm like, oh my God, I'm horrible. I got through it. The sun came up tomorrow.
That's true. Well, you talk about another thing, and you brought it up a little bit earlier, but I think it takes, the humility part of it. I think ego ruins so many things in business. And I feel like once people can say things like, I'm not good at X, I don't like doing X, can you help me with that? I think there's a lot that can be learned. Is it difficult for some leaders to punch through and really say, like, hey man, you need to drop that and be a little bit more humble and check your ego? And how does that usually go when you have that conversation?
Yeah, well, I can think of a couple. That's a really good question. I think about two different examples. One, I got brought in by an unnamed client to coach an unnamed top performer who had ego. And what the most rewarding thing out of that process was, again, patience, asking questions. I didn't lead, and I knew that what I did at my corporate career was like 3x of what this dude did. Yeah. Now I wasn't going to lead in with that because he would have been massively defensive. I asked questions. I complimented him, built him up. And I said, man, that really resonates with what you're doing. he goes, well, tell me what you did. Well, I had a pretty good career. Well, like what? And I said, well, I managed blah, blah, blah. And I did this. Well, what else? I just gave him little bits. He's like, and then all of a sudden I said, well, I did this. And his eyes just got big. And I said, listen, I'd love to tell you how I got there, and a lot of lessons learned along the way. I see some of the things you're doing now. I've already been through that.
Yep.
And I learned the hard way, and I'd love to be able to share with you how you learn. If you can learn it quicker than I did, we both win.
But so great.
And so he came to his own rescue. Right.
Yeah.
So I think I made it his idea. That just kind of like the art of selling. The art of selling or persuasion says, if I try to convince you to do something, you're going to resist me.
Yeah.
If I ask great questions of value to make you realize how great my idea is, you're going to sell yourself. Now, someone might say that's kind of manipulating, Casey. And I'll challenge him right back. Just like the person who taught me this said, do you believe what you do matters? I said, yeah. Would you ever try to convince someone to do something where only you benefited? I said, no, I never do that. And that's called value-based selling. So I think, that point, the other thing around ego, I'll share that was one of the most powerful pieces of advice I got at my first job out of college. Shout out to a guy named Dana Milkey, Matt Saratsky, and then Doug Arthur. They taught me the phrase that said, you can be right or get what you want. Rarely can you get both. You can be right or get what you want. Not only is it great leadership advice, it's great marriage advice. Dads.
Oh, it is right. Yeah, that definitely is.
Because too often when our ego gets in the way, it's now where we're measuring, and that, right. And to me, when we check our ego, like I always say, do you guys see this hat rack behind me? Well, it's invisible. It's for my ego. I hang out every day. And everybody on earth gets 1,440 minutes per day. No one gets more, no one gets less. And then the clock resets.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like when we stop to think about how great we are, elite we are, we're not. And my college football coach, Uncle Rico moment here, he said, Casey, when you have to tell people how good you are, you're not that good. When you're great, they'll tell you.
Yes.
And so I just love sharing those stories with like leaders. It's like, listen, I know you're smart. One of my other clients, I said, this is the gap. You guys have 5 teams I'm coaching. The leaders, you're the smartest in the room.
Yeah.
And none of your teams get to speak. Tell me how that benefits them.
Right. Yeah.
I get blank stares.
Of course. What you just said, that your college football coach just said, when I watch sports, you watch these interviews at the end of the game. Obviously a big Eagles fan. We've talked about that before. Donovan McNabb used to always say, I'm the leader of this team. And I kept saying, if you have to keep telling people that you're the leader of the team, you absolutely are not. So to be able to have that framework where it says, if you're great, other people will tell you is fascinating to me. I love it.
Yeah, it's it's kind of like the same phrase. If I'm 100% honest with you, let me tell you what I think. Well, why do you have to tell me were you not honest like 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You're right, though. It's like to state the obvious. And I think sometimes a quarterback is usually a leader, but leadership is influence. Leadership is not a title.
Yep.
Leadership is actions. It's walking the walk. It's, doing the things that no one wants to do and no one's looking.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, I love this stuff. This is fun.
Yeah, me too. So let's talk real quick. You talked about it a little bit earlier. Tell us the name of the book again.
Win the relationship, not the deal.
So explain what do you think that means?
So to me, sometimes people get confused. Like, you don't want to win deals? What are you, an idiot? I'm like, no, you don't get it. To me, it's more important to win a person.
Yeah.
I want to win a relationship first. I want to build a relationship. I want to win the person, which might mean I might need to walk away from a deal. But in the end, if I win people, deals are always going to be there. If I always just try to win a transaction and not the relationship or the person, that's a risk.
Great point.
And so when I was like, this was probably 10, 12 years ago, I was in Dallas traveling, helping set up like this office that helps support one of our large accounts. And there was like 3 or 4 folks that was like my junior. And I was like the big brother they were trying to like impress. And they were just so competitive and wanted to do all these things. And they wanted to win so bad. And I was like, I want you to expect yourself to win every deal, but you're not. But how do you win people? How do you win a deal when you lose? And they looked at me like, huh? What are you talking about? I said, think about it. Think about if we lose a deal to ABC company and from the staffing perspective. And then we follow up with that client and said, hey, Susie, thanks for the opportunity to compete. I'm bummed we didn't get that opportunity, but I wanted to follow up to make sure that the company you chose gave you everything you needed, and that you got a good experience. Just by doing that specific intentional follow-up, I would pick up so many deals because they'd say, hey, Casey, thanks for following up. The person that we were going to hire, they backed out. Is your person still available? Or they'd say, hey, thanks for following up. The client we chose, I haven't even heard from them yet. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully you will. I mean, and if there's anything I can do in the future, let me know. Differentiated myself. So, and then it was like, you guys, we have to win relationships, not deals. And right when I said it, it was like when Griswold saw his tree. Yeah. It was like lightning. I was like, that's it. That's the title. And I remember I wrote an article. It was, I look back now, not that good, but at the time I thought it was like, Hemingway. Yeah. And right. But it was like winning. And so that phrase kind of got stuck. And then some of my buddies at K-Force would give me a hard time about it, but I'm so glad that it was able to come to fruition. And I still live my life that way. It's about making friends. It's about treating your clients like friends. Like you wouldn't treat a friend that way, or you wouldn't treat your mom or dad that way, or your brother or sister or your uncle. But but when in business, we're allowed to be a-holes to each other. I don't get it.
When you talk about it as when you're so focused on the transaction, people tend to have a tendency to get, as a former partner of mine who passed away, who was the man, he used to say, you get commission breath, and people can smell commission breath a mile away. When you literally are interested on focusing on building the relationship and knowing, hey, I lost this case, but or I lost this deal or whatever, but if I have a good relationship with this person, at some point they'll remember that and come back to me and say, hey, that didn't work out. I think that's awesome. And I think that's such a powerful thing that gets lost, especially in that high pressure sales environment.
Well, not only that, but to your point earlier about center of influence or COIs, and that's all, that mindset will massively help people build more centers of influence. Yep. When you're serving others, you're not worried about yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you are, but you're not leading with it. You're leading with service and helping others. And in the end, the client, the prospect, or the center of influence are going to be like, hey, man, Brian, you've sent me 4 referrals. How can I help you? Oh, hey, thanks for asking. Yeah, I'd really love to learn about this.
But as you said, if you keep score and you go, I sent him 4, they didn't send me anything, that I don't like that guy anymore. That's a different mentality. I think you're so right about that.
Now, let me, for the person that's little, I would say not buying into what I'm saying. If it's 100-0, maybe I'll keep score then.
Sure. Fair point.
Right. But I'm talking about like nickel and diamond, 1 for 1, tit for tat. Like, well, hey, I took you to lunch last week, Brian, and my bill was $13.46 at McDonald's, and you only took Whoppers were 99 cents. And so let's even this thing out a little bit.
That's a race to the bottom for sure. I love the theme of your podcast. Talk a little bit about how you came up with it and why.
Heavy. So I am pro woman. I'm pro diversity. I'm pro equity. I love helping others. I love attacking my own gaps as a white middle-aged privileged guy who come as they come. When the podcast was out, it was really the Me Too was, and then I sometimes heard this thing called He Too. There's not a lot of He Too. And then I thought, there isn't a lot of thing for dads out there. Mm-hmm. And I realized, and I was like, maybe that's a good way to do it. And I knew I wanted to start a podcast because I love learning and being curious. And then I was like, okay, how can I put a play on words in this? Then I thought about, quarterback. Quarterbacks traditionally leaders of the team. Well, hey, maybe a quarterback and a dad. Dad traditionally can be a leader of the house, but wives could be just as good or better. And a lot of times the wives are the wives are usually the general manager who hired the quarterback. Great way to put it. And so then I was like, Quarterback Dadcast. I said, that sounds like a cool name. And then I had a shout out to my college teammate, guy named Ty Nunez, who he's the one that really helped me. He says, dude, stop talking about it. Let's go. I'm coming to your house right now. We're going to build this thing out.
That's great.
And he got me off my, and he was my first episode, and he interviewed me. And then he's the number one reason why this thing's off the ground. And so I have so much gratitude towards him, but it really was just a way to help dads speak and talk. And because most guys are not vulnerable. Most guys don't talk about their feelings. Yeah. Most guys are afraid to talk about last time they cried. Most guys, aren't going to admit they're wrong. Most guys are afraid to say, I'm sorry. Most guys are not going to go out of their way to say, tell me how I can be a better dad this week. Yeah. Tell me how I can be a better husband this week. And if I can help put a dent in the dudes that are got their ego in the way and realize that, hey, bro, we have all got gaps.
Yeah.
And if we can help inspire our sons to be better, and then teach our daughters what they should expect in a future partner.
Great point.
And I have two sponsors, Acme Homes and Catch Seika Seafoods. They just literally, I don't charge them a lot. They help just cover my costs to help keep this thing going. And I'm so grateful for them because, they're getting brand awareness. We're supporting dads. And it's, and like I mentioned in the early part of this conversation, it's definitely become more of a business development relationship tool as well. Cause my clients I coach, they hear about it and they want to be guests.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. So from my personal experience being on it, we talked about things that I literally hadn't talked about in 10 plus years. And we went down a path that I was like, holy crap, I just met this guy. And, I'm like bearing my soul to him, which was fascinating to me. Cause I'm everything that you talked about, like the stereotypical dad, not super in touch with the feelings, and I think it's a really great thing to see for you to be a champion of like getting other dads going and helping them be better. We all want to be better dads, in the grand scheme of life. So to be able to do that, I think is awesome. And I commend you for that.
I appreciate it, man. Well, that's actually one of my new goals is when I hear people say that. So like when we get done recording, they're like, sometimes they'll say, holy crap, I feel like I just got done therapy.
Yeah.
That was, or they'll be like, I've not talked about that in 20 years.
Yeah, literally. And actually another thing, as we wrapped up the podcast, we were talking off air, and you said, you remember what you told me about a dirty word?
Need to?
Yeah.
Or have to?
Have to, should.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned that, I really need to take my daughter out on a date. And I, after you called me out on that, and I was like, damn, I
asked for permission first too.
You did. That is true. You did. So I'll have you know that we went out on a date on Saturday night and we had a fantastic time.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh boy. What'd you guys do?
We went out to dinner and then we went out for ice cream. We were going to do like mini golf and stuff, but that didn't end up happening. But we actually had an unbelievable time. My daughter's 14. She's going to high school next year. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of emotions going in for a 14-year-old girl heading in high school. So it was a great way to connect with her. So I have to thank you for that.
So good. Well, hey, a coach is only as good as a student. So way to go, man. That's awesome.
Right. Very cool. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right, Casey. Well, thank you so much for your time. I loved it. I love talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. If people want to learn a little bit more about you, where can they go?
I would say the best way is visit my website, which is just caseyjacox.com. I'm big into LinkedIn. So that's a great way to connect with me. I love connecting with people, learn about other people's business. So you want to connect with me that way. If you want to check out my book, you can find it on Amazon. It's available via Kindle, Audible. I narrated it myself.
Awesome.
Or paperback. And then if you want to check out my podcast, it's on all the major podcast players. And we come out every Thursday morning.
Fantastic. I love it. If you want to connect with me on the Untapped app, my username is brcarney7. To learn more about how our firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. And finally, to hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. Now, moment of truth for this beer. It's not bad. I love Cape May. I would give it a 3 out of 5. I would definitely drink it again. I wouldn't go crazy for it, but I liked it. Cape May is awesome. Casey, thank you so much again for your time. Wish you the best and cheers to you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by Rivers Edge Advisors. For more information on how Rivers Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.